Hello, this is Enemy Engaged 1.16.2. I'm going to demonstrate some changes to my GWUT. And a little change to the INI, the flight model, and some additions to my GlovePIE script for use with PPJoy, virtual joystick, that I use as an intermediary between my HOTAS and pedals and the Sims. So the recon range I've changed from 1 or 2 kilometers to just under 5 kilometers, and the AI like it, and I like it, and there doesn't seem to be any adverse issues with it. Thankfully, because I was a little worried it would have problems. If you have to go right up against a target to do a recon, you're gonna, that's risky and stupid, and it's about 5 kilometers is when you often have your co-pilot, saying something about we're nearing the target, and the FLIR in the best circumstances seems to start working about that time. The GlovePIE additions include me returning back to some non-linearity for the collective, which is compressed towards the front bottom of the collective, so a throttle front or bottom of a collective. So down at low collective, this is minimum collective. I have the range from 10% to 100%, so I can't decelerate unrealistically, and I can't power out of a VRS unrealistically without doing anything else to my cyclic or pedals. Yeah, so this is minimum, and this would be the afterburner detent. That's a big change. And you gotta be very gradual and gentle take off, because it'll do a lot with a little when it's taken off like that with this non-linearity. And towards the rear of the throttle or the top of the collective, you have a lot more nuance, and changes do less. So this is the rear detent, and this is max. Rear detent, max. And here's with some cyclic. Okay. And the other change, I'm going to tell my wingman not to run into me. Formation list. Column. I believe column is the one that's further back. Let's look and make sure he's actually moving to a safe distance. I don't even see him. He's probably orbiting the base still. The other thing I've added to the script now is a little counter yaw opposite this ubiquitous coordinated turn aerodynamic effect, whatever it is in Enemy Engaged. That the only way you can get rid of it right now completely is with Flight Model 1, which is unrealistic in that it has no lateral yaw, side-to-side aerodynamic streamlining or weather vaning. It completely turns it off, so you can just start spinning around. It's like there's no air. There's air in the vertical, but not air in the horizontal of your aircraft, so they did a hack because they knew it was kind of goofy and it was hard to do side slipping and flying sideways which it still is with this little script change that I've done, but it makes at least a little bit of side slipping easier. It'll do kind of a counter yaw in the opposite direction of your bank. And it's conservative, so it's not a lot, because in the Apache it can overdo it, and in the GWUT it can easily overdo it, because the pedal yaw that it's using to do the counter yaw in the script that it's applying in the background when I bank, so I bank in one direction and it's applying this counter yaw in the opposite direction. GWUT, the yaw that I can apply, I'm not talking about the ubiquitous coordinated turning, I mean the actual pedal yaw, is like 3 times what it should be. So the yaw divider rotary on the throttle that I have that goes from 1 to 2 in the middle to 3 that I use, especially on the GWUT, but also on the hind actually, that is also going to affect this counter yaw thing, so I have it actually applied twice. So with a little rotary all the way forward, it does a divider of 6 on this counter yaw for the GWUT. I don't think I've tried this yet on the hind, but yeah, the hind has the really fast yaw too for some reason in Flight Model 0. So yeah, you'll see it, especially in the beginning, because it takes a split second for this coordinated turn thing to actually start doing its thing. And so at first you'll see it kind of, see that? It'll sort of yaw in the wrong direction, but that's okay because it'll compensate back. And it tunes out. It's using the stick deflection, the virtual stick, and the auto trimming. And there's a delay of like I don't know, 2 seconds or so. So it's a smoothing function on it. And so around between 50 and 100 knots, it's like tuning this counter yaw out. So it's just this coordinated turning should be happening when, like right now, it should not be happening. If I bank, it's just going to do this coordinated turn. It'll yaw on its own. So it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And if you have this auto trim and the stick back, it's going to be as if it's not tuned out. It's going to be as if you're hovering, because it'll do this auto turn coordination in the sim in enemy gauged, even when you're going in reverse. So we are nearing, I should be going lower, but I think there's some hills between me, not really, you can't really see it from there. I've flown this before though, so I know it's hard to see the SAM batteries. I can transmit now anyway. Make sure I don't hit this dude. Don't run into me, man. I guess he is a long distance calling now. I also have right now, I usually put it's called rudder drag, but it's really yaw drag, tail drag. It's not drag in forward motion, it's when you rotate. I put that down from 1.0 to 0.4. And there isn't really a yaw damper in enemy gauge, so that value has to kind of double as your yaw damper. And with it lower, it's kind of like you have a yaw damper deactivated or a heading hold deactivated in the Comanche and the Apache and SAS and AFCS equipped helicopters. And yeah, that's kind of weird, but that value is helping the Hokum B not ramp up as much on the yaw as quickly. It still has a really high max yaw, but it's slightly more manageable. It could even be a handful if you divided the yaw by 2 or 3 times sometimes. So I'm like this. If I get into a hover, I can rotate and it'll keep going. My pedal wasn't even applied. Applying the pedal, foot off, and it'll just keep rotating. And it'll take a bit to slow down now. So it's more like X-plane when you have the yaw damper turned off in a helicopter you've equipped with it. So like in Apache, if you don't have the heading hold channel on, you have to kind of counter yaw to stop yourself. And it also incentivizes you being more gentle with the pedals. So I personally put it down to 4.4, and maybe I'll raise it back up to 5, or put it back down. Down to 2 made the Hokum B such that you really didn't even need a yaw divider for the Hokum B anymore. 0.2 and the differential value between the drag on the rotors that apparently is being used for Flight Model 0's yaw on the coaxial. I think the only coaxial that's a true coaxial in Flight Model 0 is a Hokum B. And so it's using the drag value as how it dictates the maximum yaw. It's this differential between the 2 main rotors. It's an odd way that they're coding it. So if you put it at 0.2, that value, yeah, you don't even need a yaw divider on it. But then it's like really loose on the yaw on everything else. And the Black Shark, the KA-50 single-seater, that value seems to make it way too slow. So it's barely fast enough yaw on the KA-50. At 1.0, and you could put it at 0.2, and it's somehow affecting that one too, even though what I've heard is that's really just a tail rotor helicopter that cosmetically in Flight Model 0, maybe that was before, and maybe Javelin's changes also affected Flight Model 0 when he tried to improve the coaxials. I assumed his changes on the coaxials only affected Flight Model 2 though, because those are the ones that all the coaxials are way too slow in the yaw. You get more yaw from using the banking to get the coordinated turning on the coaxials in Flight Model 2, so you have to use Flight Model 0 for coaxials. If you want cross coupling off though, if you want to do manual tail mixing on the tail rotor helos all the time, without any tail mixing, without any cross coupling, you need to use Flight Model 2 because it's broken. The lift, drag, and yaw is all kind of busted on Flight Model 0 when you turn off cross coupling now. But I mean, if you're really hung up on doing manual yaw, manual pedal stuff, and you don't have springs on your pedals, or you've got some little rotary on your throttle and you're just going to tweak that all the time. It's a lot of work in my opinion, but if you're going to do that, you're probably not going to be flying coaxials anyway. So the fact that their yaw is kind of screwed up in Flight Model 2 probably isn't going to bother you. Probably going to be flying the Hind around, or the Kiowa. I don't know how people are flying the Hind without a working gunner cockpit anymore though. The GWUT, I have also made the red side helos. Many of them have higher health, so they're more durable and they have more armor. They're harder to fight with anyway, so it kind of balances out the game, but Russian aircraft tend to be pretty durable. They can take the sand, the dust, bird strikes, all sorts of stuff. So it kind of makes sense. American helicopters tend to be a little more fragile, high maintenance. That would be an interesting thing to put in enemy engaged, so that the maintenance cycle time for repairs and the turnaround after you've finished a mission could potentially be made shorter for the red side and longer for the blue side, so that functionally the red side could have more active helos available to fly at any one time. Or you could set up a campaign to where you just have fewer helos on the red side, but their maintenance turnaround is shorter. That would be interesting. But something like the Comanche was supposed to have a really short turnaround because of self-diagnostic computer stuff. And of course the Cobra and the Viper have common parts, so maintenance on those is supposed to be pretty easy. Apaches are supposed to be a real nightmare when it comes to maintenance. Like for every flight hour you have a huge amount of maintenance to do on one. Oh, don't run into me! Jeez Louise. They just went right over me. That'd be cool if that caused me to vibrate or move around when he got near me. Be very careful. Helicopters will try and land on you. Look around when you're taking off. You might have to take off in a hurry. I rarely ever land in the correct landing spots. I usually land off to the side somewhere. And lately in a Comanche, I've been noticing if you return to base after a mission to an airfield with runways, I'm not even going over the runways because I can get a CTD or a freeze. So I'm just landing at the edge of the airfield on like some little path or taxiway near the helo area, but I'm not landing on the airfields anymore, on the runways. I used to do that a lot, like rolling landings with Flight Model 0 because the taxiing on it works. Flight Model 2's taxiing is busted. It does have good RPM effects in Flight Model 2 though. They're kind of overdone. It takes a lot of nose down and you have to drop your collective really fast in order to retain RPM, get the RPM back up if you're auto-rotating with Flight Model 2. But once it does get back up, it's pretty cool. You get to manage your RPM with your collective and your nose down, and it works pretty well once you get past that need to ramp the RPM back up. That's kind of overdone. Am I missing anything? I think that's everything I covered, and I didn't get shot down, so I would say that was a success. And they're probably going to move themselves around. I've landed and they're going to move to some other spot. They often fly out and then fly back. I hope they're not going to fly all the way back out to X. Okay, I'm going to go back in and see if it'll let me. You got to make sure it doesn't re-engage your rotor brake though. Yep, it just did that. Oh my gosh, that's so annoying when it does that. So he hasn't exploded yet, so I'm going to... So they'll re-engage the rotor. For some reason, the rotor will get engaged and you'll drop. But I haven't blown up. So I changed the waypoint back to W. I must not have done that before. And so it wants to fly back out there. And hopefully he doesn't explode. I mean, this isn't an important one. I just started a Europe campaign from scratch, so... If he blows up, he blows up. Oh, I've got it paused. I don't know, that's not my helicopter. They're over here. He seems to be still intact. Nah, that's not him. There he is. He's still flying around. There's his wingman. He's returning to base now. But they'll often, I mean, if you don't land on the specific spot you're supposed to, it'll lift back up and fly around a little circuit around the heliport thing and land on the spot really slowly. Make sure your waypoints are correct. And if you get shot down, your wingman will first take over your prior waypoint, even if that was a dangerous waypoint, and then they'll do something stupid. So you might want to jump into your wingman and change his waypoint to something safer. Oh, it's dark. I do have my night visibility turned down to like 0.2. I hate that lit horizon. Even at midnight, it's like that. It just flew through a building. Oh. I've never seen that before. I guess the AI can do that. If I did that, I'd blow up. The AI can also fly through trees. But the only horizon I've seen in enemy engaged, one that doesn't look all lit up like that, is it's like bad weather, the worst weather setting you can have, where it's really stormy, especially in the desert. It'll get kind of this dark red. That doesn't look too bad. I also noticed that for some reason with the FLIR on, like at dusk or dawn, in the cockpit, so the night vision system on, I have it set to be FLIR also on both red and blue side. But you get better distant visibility and less haze, even if your visibility is actually should be pretty good. It's a little strange. So it's like this ever-present haze that's all over the place. It kind of goes away a little bit with the night vision system on. And yet if I go out of the cockpit into cockpit, disappear the cockpit so all you see is the MFDs in the corner and the HUD or HMD in the middle, the visibility goes back down to as if you have the night vision and IR system off. So there's something about being in the cockpit and enemy engaged that's improving the visibility. Enemy engaged 2, Fantastic graphics system. I love the graphics system on that. It's much higher frame rate, hundreds of frames per second. Very crisp. Visibility isn't an issue. There's tons of glitches. That's so glitchy. It's unusably glitchy, but they got a great graphics system. I think I should stop the video and then just play for fun, because if I keep going I'm gonna get shot down and that's gonna be embarrassing. Okay, thank you for joining me.